In today's video, we'll talk about lenses again, just like in the previous two videos. This time we'll focus on extreme long lenses, their specifications, and how to work with them. Welcome, my name is Jan Smid. I hold the highest photographic title, Master Qualified European Photographer. I've been organizing photography workshops and photo expeditions around the world for more than 13 years. And I am one of the 25 ambassadors of the legendary Carl Zeiss brand in the world. I produce this channel with my colleagues Pavel and Martin, who travel with me on expedition as lecturers. What lenses do I mean when I talk about extreme long lenses? Mostly zooms or prime lenses from 2 to 600 mm. There are exceptions and even longer focal lengths. There are also 800 mm focal lengths in some portfolios, but these are very exceptional lenses for a very narrow segment of photographers. For landscape photography, extremely long focal lengths have relatively limited use, but that doesn't mean we don't use them at all. On the contrary, we just need to know what compositions to shoot with them and how. For me, such long lenses are particularly useful for certain photo locations where I go with expeditions. The most typical is Tuscany and also a part of the Czech Republic, specifically South Moravia, where there is a small area very similar of Tuscany. Let's show some photos from South Moravia. They were all taken at focal lengths of 3 or 400 mm. In both locations, I organize special photo workshops and expeditions under the name of Photography Wine Harvest. This is a concept where we learn how to take and edit photos, but we also learn how to taste wine. Surprisingly, this part of the course is the most fun for the participants. Unfortunately, there are only few locations in South Moravia. In spring, when it is ideal to take photo there, we can find dozens of photographers in one place. Now we only do expeditions to Tuscany. I have to say that there is a lot of interested people in this expedition, and most of the participants come back every year. After all, combining photography with tasting great Brunello is just perfect. Perhaps I should just add that Brunello, made from the Sangiovese grapes, is one of the absolute top Italian wines. But back to the lenses. Zooms are the most affordable for us. For example, Sony makes two zoom lenses, one with a range of 100 to 400 mm, just we have here, and the other 200 to 600 mm. So let's take a look at the first one. As you can see, it is already just quite big lens, and the manufacturer has equipped it with a tripod foot. Lenses this big and heavy are attached to the tripod head by the tripod foot. If we wanted to attach a camera equipped with such a heavy lens directly to the tripod head as usual, we would be in danger of breaking the lens mount. And we'll show you one more thing. There is probably at least one photographer on every expedition who, when he wants to shoot vertically with such a lens, does it in this way. Please don't do that. Just loosen the screw and simply flip it over. So what is the general advantage of this type of lens? They have a very good focal length range, good aperture, not that big and heavy. And most importantly, they offer a very decent price to quality ratio. Anyway, given the basic aperture, these lenses are almost exclusively popular among landscapers. Animal or sports photographers need faster lens, but we'll get to those later. We'll show some more photos taken with extremely long zooms. The first three are again from South Moravia. As with the previous photos, these are all simple panoramas, and each time it is a narrow angle shot of a landscape without sky. Let's take a look at the picture from Tuscany again in the 300 or 400 mm range. In addition to long zoom lenses, prime lenses are also available. How do they differ? Mainly in their aperture. On the market we can find fixed focal lengths of 2, 3 and 400 mm with a base aperture of f2.8. Their quality is really top-notch. On the other hand, these lenses are already really huge, heavy and very expensive. In most cases, they are bought by sports photographers or animal photographers. Even longer focal lengths, like 5 or 600 mm, are most often offered with an f4 aperture. Again, these are huge, heavy and expensive lenses. Here we have the Sony 400 f2.8 prime lens. The truth is that for landscapers, these prime lenses are useless. Landscape photographers shoot with a higher aperture than basic, while on the contrary, animal or sports photographers prefer an open aperture. However, if you have enough money and ideally some sort of career, a lens like this will literally be a gem in your photography kit. Whether we shoot with long zoom lenses or prime lenses, we have to remember some specifics and work a little differently with these focal lengths. First of all, we have to think carefully about composition. When working with the more common, wider focal lengths, we try to follow a basic compositional rule. That is to have a foreground, a middle and a background. With such long focal lengths, we are usually dealing with a very small part of the landscape, where we cannot normally keep these three plans. We have to help ourselves with light, shadow and color. We must also take great care to close the edges of the photo with darker parts, if it is even a little bit possible, of course. Here we can see the darker framing at the top and bottom of the photo. Also the distribution of light and shadows throughout the whole photo, as well as the colors. All of this creates space in the photo, and the whole panorama certainly doesn't feel flat. The photographs at very long focal lengths are really quite complex in terms of composition and require a certain amount of compositional experience. We have to remember that by using long focal lengths, we are taking pictures of landscape that we often can't even see properly with our eyes. it can be several kilometers away. We can see only the composition clearly only when we look through the viewfinder or when we look at the zoom display. In the case of panoramic photographs, the situation is even more complicated and requires a lot of compositional practice. Often we fail to convey the proportion to the viewer. I mean, what is big or small. That is why it is ideal if we manage to incorporate some generally known object. This will give the viewer a clear idea of what is how big or small. In this panoramic photo, I managed to take a picture of the harvester with its operator. This gives us a clear idea of how much of the landscape we can see. We have to work in a specific way with a long focal length when it comes to focusing. A lot of photographers like to focus through live view. So they display a focus square, place it somewhere in the composition and autofocus. However, in many cases, the focusing square is so large that with ultra long focal length, we don't know where we actually focusing. That's why I recommend focusing manually to make sure we actually have the focus where we want it. Unlike wildlife photographers, for example, we have plenty of time to focus, so we prefer to focus slowly but precisely. Extremely long focal lengths have another problem. They are very prone to motion blur caused by movement. Because of their size and weight, we need a really sturdy tripod. So small travel tripods just cannot handle the weight. For example, some photographers have had a classic geodesic tripod modified so that they can use a photographic head. As you can see, I have one of those tripods here too. So for locations we drive to, such a tripod is ideal. Of course, it's not for carrying around, because it's really heavy, but very stable and solid. So if you are shooting a composition at the edge of a field, we stomp the geodesic tripod deep into the dirt and it will not move at all. You might find a few more tips useful. So carry a large umbrella on the location, not for rain, but as a windbreak. You will find that a relatively small gust of wind can easily shake a camera with a long lens on. If the wind blows against you, the umbrella will not help, of course. But if it's blowing from the sides or behind, you can hide the camera against the wind. Don't be afraid to use a higher ISO. Why, you ask? We have a tripod. Yes, we do. But again, the same thing I said before. A relatively light wind can blow long lens around, especially if we don't have an umbrella as a windbreak or the wind blows against us. Then a higher ISO will give us a shorter times. So ISO 400 or 640 is a good choice. Another trick, turn off the stabilization, both on the lens and in the camera if your camera has it. Stabilizers are a great help when shooting handheld. If we are shooting from a tripod, they are our enemy. Manufacturers claim that technology is brilliant and knows when it's mounted on a tripod to turn off stabilization. Don't believe it and turn it yourself. The good news is that only a small part of landscape is really photographed with very long lenses and mostly without the sky. This way the scene doesn't have too much dynamic range and we can expose color without exposure bracketing. We should just make sure that most of the data is concentrated in the right part of the histogram. What does it mean? We simply take a photo a little brighter than the exposure meter recommends, but without overexposure, of course. Also, there are some exceptions. This panorama from 2016 is a shot at the prime lens with focal length of 300 mm. It is a panorama in 2 rows, and besides the landscape, the sky is also in the frame. This is the ideal time to turn on exposure bracketing. Have you taken any landscape photos with extremely long focal length? We would like you to share your experience in the comments below. So now we have here something that is not really very common in landscape photography. Uh, it's Sony 400mm 2.8 aperture, and yeah, it's obvious that we don't use it in landscape photography very often. There are just a few compositions, for example in Tuscany, where we can use such a long lens, but you see, it's really very big, very heavy, and because it's 2-point aperture, so this lens is very fast. So it's for sport photographers or wildlife photographers, but not for us. I mean, for landscapers. So here in Prague, we can shoot some detailed views, but you know, okay, we can take one shot. And yeah, that's it. And guys, that's all for today. We hope you enjoyed our video, and give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and see you next Saturday.